When Billionaire's rips Maid's uniform at midnight, her devastating reaction haunts all. The clock lurked ominously at 12. Midnight, the witching hour, when shadows danced in the corners and secrets whispered through the halls. Inside the luxurious mansion of billionaire Charles Hastings, an unsettling tension hung over the air like fog. Light flickered from an opulent chandelier, casting eerie shapes on the marble floor. This was no ordinary night. This was the moment everything changed. Lydia, the young maid, stood with her hands trembling. The fabric of her crisp, white uniform felt heavier with each second. She had dedicated herself to this household, scrubbing floors, polishing silver, even attending to the whims of guests. But tonight was different. As she dusted the grand living room, the sounds of drunken laughter spilled from the study, mixing with the rich aroma of champagne. It was a party for the elite people who wove dreams and fortunes, their lives appearing flawless from the outside. But inside, this place was haunted. Suddenly, the door crashed open. Clara Hastings, the matriarch, emerged like a storm. Her hair was a wild mane, and her eyes glinted with the chaos of a night gone wrong. "That dress, it makes you look like a maid," she shrieked, the venom in her voice cutting through Lydia's heart like a knife. In one swift motion, she lunged forward, ripping a seam in Lydia's uniform. The sound was horrid of fabric tearing, echoing through the room. Gasps filled the air. Guests turned their heads, their reactions a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Lydia stood frozen, her lips parted in disbelief. How could someone so powerful wield their rage like a weapon? The humiliation crashed over her like a tidal wave, pulling her deeper into despair. The stares of onlookers felt like daggers. She felt exposed, small, as if her worth had been stripped away along with the fabric. A lump formed in her throat. How could she respond? Each heartbeat pounded louder than the last, and she could barely draw a breath. The clinking of glasses and laughter dimmed into nothing. Only the sound of Lydia's jagged inhalations filled the space. She caught the gaze of a few guests, all narrowing their eyes, whispering under their breath, "Did you see that? What will she do now?" The murmurs ricocheted around them, a growing storm of judgment. Inside her chest, fear clenched tightly, threatening to suffocate her. The room felt like it was closing in. The walls seemed almost to pulse with collective breath. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Now, all eyes were on Lydia. What would she do? With a sharp intake of breath, she felt an unexpected surge. Was it anger? Strength? Across the room, Clara stood smug, arms crossed, waiting for a sign of defeat. Would this moment become a nightmare forever etched in their memories? Or could Lydia turn the tables, reclaim her power? Spectators leaned in. The atmosphere had thickened like a brewing storm. What would follow this moment? The real question was, how would it all end? The silence that followed felt razor-sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. Lydia's eyes darted around the room, taking in the faces illuminated by the dim light. A mix of curiosity and disdain twisted their features, each pair of eyes glued to her, as if she were a creature in a cage. Clara's sneer widened, as if relishing in the spectacle of Lydia's misery. Then Lydia exhaled. A shuddering breath filled with something akin to fury and fear blended together, igniting a spark deep within her. "You don't define me," she whispered, barely loud enough for her own ears, but it was as if the words resonated through her very bones. The audience could feel the tension shift, like a storm cloud gathering strength before the downpour. Clara's expression faltered for a fraction of a second. The matriarch hadn't expected a response, let alone one that conveyed defiance. Lydia took a half-step forward, her heart racing. For all the turmoil within her, a newfound resolve surged. She wasn't just a maid. She was a person, a human being with feelings and desires. "Lydia," came the soft, hesitant voice of one of the guests, Sarah, a wealthy boutique owner who had always spoken kindly to her. "Maybe it's best to stay out of this, Sarah," Clara snapped, her voice sharp and authoritative. "This is not your place." The air crackled with tension, thick enough to taste, as guests whispered among themselves, a flurry of speculations and judgments swirling like a cyclone. Lydia's mind raced. Was the only reaction to hide? Or could she harness this moment, however horrifying, to assert her existence? With every eye upon her, a glimmer of the power she thought she'd never possess shimmered inside. In an impulsive move, she tugged at the remains of her uniform, the delicate fabric giving way just enough for her to pull it off completely. Gasps swept through the crowd. Lydia stood there, breath heavy, heart pounding, in her simple clothes. She felt exposed, yes, but free too. "What now?" she challenged, her voice steadying. "Is a torn dress the only way you view me? You may have wealth, but I have dignity." Gasps turned into a stunned silence. Clara's face twisted in fury, but doubts crept into her eyes. The foundations she'd relied on, the image of perfection she'd built, were beginning to crumble beneath Lydia's unexpected audacity. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they were watching not just a battle between maid and matriarch, but a clash of values. What loyalties would they uphold? "You'll regret this." Clara spat, her anger palpable. "Will I?" Lydia replied, her heart racing faster. Perhaps she wouldn't leave the mansion the same. Perhaps she wouldn't leave at all. Maybe everything would change in this moment. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the tension. A window shattered, raining glass that sparkled like diamonds on the floor. Screams filled the air as everyone turned to see what had caused it. In the chaos, Lydia's heart raced, not just from the confrontation, but from the realization that something sinister lurked beyond the usual worries of wealth and status. Something happening out there in the dark that felt as threatening as Clara's fury. Was there an unseen danger, a shadow lurking just beyond the walls of their lavish world? As fear wrapped its icy grip around her, Lydia wondered if this was all just the beginning. What lay behind the shattered window, and what would it mean for all of them? Lydia's breath quickened, each gasp filled with a mix of shock and adrenaline. The room was alive with frantic energy. Guests were rushing, dodging shards of glass, their faces a cocktail of confusion and fear. With the echoes of the shattering window still resonating, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The lavish celebration spiraled into chaos. Guests stumbled over each other in their attempts to escape the sudden terror. Clara's eyes widened, no longer focused on Lydia but on the unknown threat outside. "What is happening?" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. The hall was dim, shadows dancing as people surged toward the exits. Lydia's heart pounded in rhythm with the chaos, drawing her back into the moment. She forced herself to remain rooted, her chest tightening with an odd mix of dread and determination. She knew this was her moment, a chance to seize control not just over her future, but the fate of everyone in that room. "Stay calm." Lydia's voice rang out, louder than she intended. The guests froze, their eyes darting back to her. "We don't know what is happening yet." Clenching her fists, she felt a surge of power flow through her. Somehow, she had become the anchor in the storm. Clara was at her side now, fury replaced by a semblance of fear. "What do you mean, stay calm? Let us get out of here." Her eyes darted toward the remaining intact windows, the flicker of movement outside contributing to the growing tension. Before she could respond, Lydia turned toward the glass strewn across the floor, a glimmer catching her eye. A shadow flickered just beyond the entrance, quick and purposeful, something lurking at the fringes of their extravagant world. "Everyone needs to stay here." Lydia yelled again, her voice steady, echoing in the chaos. "We need to figure out what is going on. If we leave, we might be walking right into danger." Clara scoffed, but the hint of uncertainty in her eyes told Lydia that doubt had invaded even her fierce resolve. She felt others creeping closer, a hesitant group gathering around her. Even Sarah, the kind boutique owner, stood beside her now, the firelight illuminating her anxious face. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed again, this time from the opposite side of the manor. It reverberated through the hall with a sense of foreboding, a reminder of the unknown threat outside. People screamed, their voices mingling in a dissonant choir of fear. "What is out there?" someone whispered, trembling. Lydia could feel the collective breath held tight among them. a suffocating hush that wrapped itself like a noose around their hearts. I don't know, Lydia admitted, the truth tumbling out, but there was a fire ignited in her. She felt alive. But if we stay together, we have a better chance of facing whatever it is. Another crash, louder this time. Fear swept through the crowd, and people began to panic once again. Clara shouted orders, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. The guests rushed toward the exits in a desperate scramble, but Lydia stepped forward, arms open wide. Stop, she commanded, a raw authority trembling in her tone. Listen to me. We stick together. All heads turned to her, and in that brief moment, she felt the connection. Their fear mingled with hope. But just as quickly, that unity frayed as another shadow darted by, darker and more menacing than before. They all caught a quick glimpse of someone just outside the door. What was that? A voice quaked, and Lydia's stomach dropped. The air thickened again, the tension winding tighter. She needed them to stay calm more than ever. Their safety depended on it. Maybe she could lead them through this nightmare. But then, just as her heart swelled with the possibility of courage, the double doors swung open with a force that could rival a hurricane. What came through the door sent chills racing down Lydia's spine, the reality of their situation crashing down harder than the shattering glass. In the heartbeat of silence that followed, she realized no amount of dignity could prepare her for what awaited them next. And as she turned to face the threat that lurked at the threshold, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the edge of an abyss. What had crossed into their world? And would they all survive the reckoning to come? The doors blasted open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. The flickering light struggled against the darkness, but there was no mistaking the tall, imposing silhouette that stood at the threshold. For a moment, everyone was frozen. Lydia's heart raced, blood pounding in her ears, drowning out the collective gasps of the guests. Stay back, she shouted, every ounce of her strength pouring into that command. But the voice was deep, resonant, sending tremors through the expansive hall. Where is she? Who? Lydia retorted, trying to sound braver than she felt. The sudden intensity of the situation tightened her throat, but she had to remain solid. The guests swayed like reeds in a strong wind, their fear palpable. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face marked by fury and desperation. Where's Clara? It echoed, laced with a raw emotion that sliced through the tension. Clara flinched beside Lydia, her eyes wide with disbelief. Me? Clara's voice wavered, confusion mixing with dread. She tried to step forward, but Lydia grabbed her arm, refusing to back down. Clara was not alone in this. Lydia wouldn't let anyone, especially not this ominous presence, tear her apart. Listen, Lydia shouted, forcing herself to look straight into the stormy depths of the stranger's eyes. You're scaring everyone. We don't have to do this. If only she could steer him away from whatever madness had brought him here. The stranger's gaze shifted, sweeping over the crowd with a mix of calculation and disdain. You think you can just hide? You think I won't find out? Clara has something of mine. His voice was a low growl, seeping into the atmosphere and curling tightly around their hearts. The murmurs swept through the crowd, heads turning anxiously. Whispers of what does he mean floated through the air, panic beginning to bubble again. Stay calm. Everyone, please. Lydia urged again, hands shaking but voice firm. She became acutely aware of the delicate balance between maintaining control and the chaos hungry to be unleashed once more. Clara remained rooted, uncertainty washing over her face. I don't have anything. Please, just leave us, she pleaded weakly, each word pulled from the depths of her fear. The figure took another step forward, and suddenly, another crash echoed from the depths of the manor. Lydia's stomach sank. They were surrounded. Each sound felt like a countdown to something far worse. The intruder smiled, a cruel twist of his lips that sent a cold chill down Lydia's spine. Tell me where it is, Clara, or I swear. His eyes darkened, a wave of menace radiating toward them. The atmosphere thickened, threatening to suffocate any remaining hope. That inkling of solidarity that had briefly blossomed among the guests began to fade. One by one they retreated, inching back into the shadows. They sought safety in silence, abandoning the strength they had found in Lydia. Don't, she cried, stepping ahead, determined to shield Clara. What do you want with her? With sheer desperation, Lydia pressed her hands against her chest, her lungs desperately drawing in air. "We can talk. We can figure this out." The figure laughed darkly, a sound that sent ripples of fear through the crowd. "Talk. Talk is for the weak. What I want you can't give suddenly." Something shattered against the wall behind him, and with a snap, Lydia's pulse quickened as she braced against the wall, eyes darting around for anything that could serve as protection. Just then, an unexpected flash of light illuminated the darkened entrance where the figure loomed. A sudden scream broke the thick tension, and Lydia's heart sank. Terror was creeping back in, filling every crevice of her being. What was coming next? They were teetering on the brink of disaster, and Lydia's mind raced as she fought to maintain control. But just as she opened her mouth to speak again, another sharp blast rang out, making the entire manor shake, and something inside her cracked. Would Clara be able to face the wrath of whatever this man brought with him? And who else was lurking among the shadows, waiting for their moment to join the nightmare? The stakes were rising, and with each passing second, the danger seemed to multiply. The air quivered with fear as the dark figure took another step, each movement exuding an unsettling aura that sent shivers down Lydia's spine. The fragments of glass crunched underfoot, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows across the crowd. Lydia glanced around. Guests were drawing back, their faces pale, eyes wide with panic. They looked more like ghosts than people, lost in the horror unfolding before them. "Clara!" The intruder barked, frustration cracking his voice. "This isn't a game. Time is running out." The very space around Lydia felt narrow, as if the walls were closing in. She clenched her jaw, heart racing. "You can't threaten us. We don't know what you want." His eyes flared, and in that moment, a flicker of something dark and unyielding surged in their depths. "You really don't know?" he said, mocking them all with a cruel smile. "Then let me make this clear. Clara stole from me, and I'm here for what is rightfully mine." "What did you say?" Clara's voice broke through the haze of terror, confusion morphing into a glint of defiance. "I haven't taken anything from you." The figure's amusement faded, replaced by a cold, icy stare. "That's a lie. Don't play games with me, Clara. You know what I'm talking about." A ripple of whispers cascaded through the room. What could she possibly have? Who is he? The questions buzzed like angry wasps, and Lydia clenched her fists, desperate to shield Clara, who was visibly shaking now. "Please," Lydia interjected, her voice a battle cry against the rising tide of fear. "All we want is for you to leave. No one has to get hurt." The intruder's gaze shifted between them, his patience waning. His posture was tense, coiled like a spring ready to snap. "You think I'm leaving here without what is mine? I will find it, with or without your help." In a sudden, swift movement, he lunged, and Lydia reacted on instinct. She pushed Clara back, placing herself squarely in front of her friend as if she could guard against the impending storm. But the man was faster, grabbing Lydia's arm in an iron grip, his fingers digging into her flesh. "Enough! Where is she?" he shouted, voice rising to a fever pitch. Lydia's heart hammered in her chest as adrenaline surged. "Get off me. You don't have to do this," she gasped, struggling against his hold. Panic crowded her mind. What was he capable of? What would he do if they didn't comply? Before she could formulate another plea, the deep boom of a door crashing open brought a jolt of confusion and urgency. Heads whipped around, eyes darting toward the entrance where another shadow appeared, a figure outlined against the flickering light. The room collectively held its breath, caught between two ominous forces. "Let her go?" The fresh voice sliced through the tension, steady and commanding. Lydia's heart plummeted as recognition hit her. It was Marcus, a security guard from the manor, his face torn between fear and determination. "What are you doing here?" Lydia shouted, confusion mixing with relief. The intruder's expression morphed from fury to a calculated grin. "The more, the merrier," he hissed. Clara's breathing quickened, her fear entangling with hope. Just what was happening? Who was Marcus in all of this? And what danger were they truly in? As Lydia's thoughts spiraled, the sound of feet rushing toward them echoed again. The manor was flooded with reinforcements' voices and heavy footsteps converging. But amidst the chaos, Lydia's instinct screamed. "Clara, we have to move." Lydia cried, her senses sharp as she felt the moment shift, urgency pressing on her like an iron weight. And just as they began to retreat, the intruder's laugh cut through the air, filled with an unnerving certainty. You think you can escape? This is just the beginning. In that instant, the flickering light dimmed one last time, plunging them into unsettling darkness. What awaited them beyond this nightmare? Would they find sanctuary or plunge deeper into the terror? The real game was just beginning. The darkness swallowed them whole, and Lydia's breath hitched in her throat, heart pounding wildly. She felt Clara's trembling frame beside her, an anchor in the abyss. The intruder's maniacal laugh echoed against the walls, a cruel reminder of the chaos that had spiraled so quickly. "Lydia, what do we do?" Clara whispered, her voice barely audible, filled with desperation. "I don't know," Lydia replied, her mind racing. She could feel the coarse material of Clara's dress, the weight of shared terror pressing them closer. Her own pulse was a war drum in the silence, the only sound beneath the crackling lights overhead. Suddenly, a flash pierced the darkness. A beam from Marcus's flashlight cut through the murky air, illuminating panic-fraught faces. "Stay back," he shouted, pushing forward, resolute yet visibly shaken. The intruder shifted, lurking like a hunting wolf, calculating. "You think that little light is going to save them?" His voice dripped with mockery, low and threaded with malice. Lydia's muscles tightened. Time was slipping away. "We've got to run," she urged Clara, gripping her hand tightly. The shadows danced menacingly as the light flickered, making it hard to see. Another flash of light erupted, aimed right at the intruder. The crowd gasped, and for a fleeting moment, fear gave way to defiance. A couple of guests, emboldened by Marcus's presence, edged closer, shouting for the figure to leave them alone. "Stop," the man growled, his temper boiling over. "You want to know what I'm capable of?" He pulled a glimmering object from his waist, a knife, reflecting the light, a horrifying promise of violence. "Back off, or I'll show you." A collective shudder rippled through the crowd. Lydia's stomach lurched as the air thickened with fear. "Clara, we need to get behind Marcus," she said urgently, pushing her friend forward. The guards were shifting, forming a reluctant barrier, but their resolve seemed weak against the palpable dread. The intruder's gaze bore down on them, predatory, watching every movement with sharp intensity. "You think hiding behind them will save you? You're all just delaying the inevitable." He stepped closer, eyes glittering with a predatory hunger. "Don't entertain his taunts," Marcus barked, steadying himself as he raised the flashlight towards the intruder, illuminating the knife glinting cruelly in the uncertain light. "We're not afraid of you." "Then you're even more foolish than I thought." The intruder sneered, his amusement stark against the urgent atmosphere. Lydia felt the icy grip of panic as the realization set in. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. This was a life-or-death struggle. She glanced at Clara, whose face reflected pure terror, then back at the armed man, heart racing. "Clara, trust me," she whispered, her voice low but fierce. "On three, we run for the side door. You ready?" Clara nodded, tears pooling in her eyes, terror mingling with a flicker of hope. 1, 2. The intruder was off balance, caught in the turmoil of his own chaos, his focus splitting thinly among the crowd. Lydia felt a surge of courage. 3. Let us go. They bolted, but not before the sound of the intruder's feet connected with the ground, chasing behind them like thunder. "Where do you think you're going?" he shouted, tone laced with fury and disbelief as they surged toward the side door. Lydia's heart raced even faster, adrenaline pumping, limbs moving as if not her own. Clara tripped on something, stumbling. "Lydia!" she cried, fear slicing through the air. Lydia barely hesitated. She turned, reaching out to steady Clara, yet the crushing pressure of urgency dragged at them both. "We have to go?" "Not without you," Clara protested, but it was too late. The darkness closed in, and before Lydia could determine a next move, the sharp metallic tang of the knife glinted dangerously close in the fading light. With a suddenness that left her breathless, darkness enveloped the room once again, the side door slamming shut behind them as a scream escaped the shadows, echoed by haunting laughter that chilled the marrow in Lydia's bones. What had they unleashed, and would they survive the night? Time was running out, and the game was far from over. The air was thick with tension as Lydia and Clara found themselves in a narrow hallway, panting heavily. The sound of their racing hearts drowned out everything else. Lydia pressed her back against the cold wall, feeling the rough texture bite into her skin. The screams and chaos faded into a haunting echo behind them, but the threat loomed just beyond the heavy door. Did he follow us? Clara's voice trembled as she looked back, fear etched deep into her features. I don't know, Lydia stammered, her mind reeling. The narrow corridor was dimly lit, the flickering bulbs overhead casting long shadows along the peeling wallpaper. She could still hear the intruder's laughter dancing in her mind, a melody of madness. Clara glanced around, spotting a door at the end of the hallway. We need to get out of here, Lydia. Now, she urged, her eyes wide with terror and determination. Lydia nodded, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might explode. Okay, let us go. But we have to be quiet. They crept forward, but the closer they got to the door, the more uncertain Lydia felt. What awaited them outside? Freedom or another nightmare? She tried to quell the relentless gnawing in her stomach. As they reached the door, Lydia pressed her ear against the cold wood, straining to listen. For a fleeting moment, silence enveloped them, as if the world held its breath. Then, a distant thud broke the quiet, a reminder that danger was still very much alive. Do you hear that? Clara whispered, fear flaring in her eyes. I do, Lydia breathed, pulling back and inching the door open just a crack. The hallway beyond was empty, but the oppressive atmosphere bore down on her. I think it's safe, she said hesitantly, taking a deep breath. Clara pushed through the opening, and they stepped into the new corridor, eyes darting around for any sign of movement. They moved swiftly, each footstep echoing far too loudly for Lydia's comfort. But just as hope began to blossom in their chests, a chilling sound echoed, an unmistakable clang resonated off the walls, followed by the unmistakable creak of the door behind them swinging open. Run! Lydia snapped, her instincts kicking into high gear. They dashed down the hall, adrenaline flooding their veins, hearts racing with fear. Their footsteps pounded like war drums, echoing through the deserted corridors. Clara was just ahead, her long hair whipping like a dark banner behind her. Where do we go? She shouted over her shoulder, glancing back with panic evident in her eyes. I don't know. Just keep moving. Lydia gasped, pushing forward. She could feel the heat of the intruder's anger behind them, a palpable force propelling them away from danger, but also toward the unknown. Another loud crash behind them sent Lydia's heart into a tailspin. He is coming, she shouted. As they reached the end of the corridor, they faced two options: an elevator door or a stairwell. The elevator loomed like a predator, promising darkness. The stairwell appeared almost mocked by shadows, but it led upward, and upward meant a chance at escape. Up the stairs, Lydia yelled, making a split-second decision. They bolted toward the stairwell, Clara close behind. The door slammed behind them as they raced upward. Each step felt like an eternity, their legs burning, lungs gasping for air. What if he caught up? What if they were trapped in the next corner? The noise of footsteps echoed ominously behind them, the intruder relentless. As they neared the top, something shifted in Lydia's gut, a prediction of doom. Suddenly, Clara let out a strangled cry, stumbling on the last step as she caught a glimpse of the figure at the top of the stairs, a silhouette waiting in the faint light. Lydia. Confusion washed over Lydia as she turned to her friend, then back to the figure who stepped forward, revealing a face that twisted Lydia's stomach into knots of disbelief. Surprised to see me? The intruder sneered, the knife glinting dangerously in the dim light. And just like that, the walls felt like they were closing in. What would happen next? Would this be the end, or was there still a way out? Time was running out as Lydia faced a choice that could change their fate forever. Lydia's breath hitched in her throat as she stared at the man blocking their way. The world narrowed down to the sharp glint of the knife in his hand, reflecting back their panic. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, but the sight of Clara's face, ghostly pale and filled with despair, rooted her in place. Get away from her, Clara shouted, trying to muster any semblance of courage. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. The intruder laughed, a chilling sound that echoed off the walls, twisting through the air like smoke. Oh, but this is just the beginning, ladies, he taunted, taking a step closer. The blade caught the light, glistening, promising harm. Lydia, we can't stay here. Clara urged again, her eyes darting around for an escape. Just behind their tormentor, the stairwell loomed, dark and uncertain, but it was their only choice. Mustering her resolve, Lydia grabbed Clara's hand. "We have to find a way around him," she whispered fiercely. Before she could take another step, the intruder lunged forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just run away? Not so fast." Lydia's heart raced as she pulled Clara with her, desperate to avoid the knife. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, fueling her desperation. They dashed toward the edge of the stairwell, where a wrought iron railing stood like a forgotten sentinel. "Now!" Lydia shouted, pushing her friend ahead. They rushed past him, adrenaline driving them far faster than fear. But as they neared the landing, a shout echoed behind them. "You can't escape me." Without looking back, Clara and Lydia flung themselves into the darkness of the stairwell, hearing the door slam open behind them. The intruder was fast, far too fast. "Come on," Lydia cried, a rush of anxiety filling her. They were nearing the second floor, but the urgency of their situation made every step feel like running through molasses. They burst through a doorway, lungs burning, hearts racing. The space opened up into a dimly lit hallway. Unfamiliar, but it appeared empty, almost too serene given the chaos they had left behind. For a moment, hope flickered in Lydia's chest. But as she turned, breathless and frantic, she sensed something was off. "Where do we go now?" Clara panted, her voice tight with fear. Lydia's mind scrambled, scanning for a potential escape. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating her with dread. "There." She pointed to another set of doors at the far end. "That might lead to a way out." They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoing against the sterile walls. But beneath the rush of adrenaline, Lydia could feel dread pooling like ice in her stomach. What lay beyond those doors? Locked safety or another trap? Just as they reached the doors, a loud crash resonated behind them, a shuddering sound that echoed through the hall. "Don't stop. Keep moving," Lydia urged, heart hammering against her ribs. She yanked the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at her throat. "Is it locked?" Clara shouted, catching up to her. "I don't know," Lydia yelled back, pounding her fists against the heavy wood, each thud matching the soundtrack of their racing hearts. The sound of heavy footsteps thundered behind them. The intruder was close, too close. In a desperate attempt, Lydia stepped back and kicked the door with all her might. The hinges creaked in defiance, but held firm. "Come on. Just a second," Clara cried out, fumbling in her pockets for something, anything to help. Time wasn't on their side. She stole a glance over her shoulder. The intruder emerged from the shadows, wild eyes locked on them, mouth curling into a twisted smile. "Nowhere to run," he said, delight gleaming in his gaze. Without thinking, Lydia slammed her shoulder against the door one last time. It flew open, and they tumbled into a new room, the air cooler and thicker with uncertainty. "Where are we?" Clara gasped, looking around wildly. "I don't know, but we can't give up," Lydia stated fiercely, her voice steadier than the tremor in her heart. They had stepped into a vast storage room, boxes piled high and organizing shelves looming ominously overhead. Shadows danced against the walls. "Which way?" Clara whispered. Then Lydia spotted something glinting in the corner, the faint reflection of metal. It was a crowbar. "Over there." She pointed, a spark of hope igniting. But as they moved, the heavy door behind them slammed shut with a deafening finality. Lydia's heart sank. They were trapped. "Lydia." Clara's voice trembled, filled with dread. Realizing time was slipping from their grasp, they had to act fast. "Clara, take it," Lydia shouted, handing her the crowbar. "We might use it to break through." But before Clara could respond, the room echoed with an unsettling silence. It was too quiet. They darted their eyes toward the doorway. The intruder's silhouette appeared in the doorway, blocking their only exit. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" He grinned, advancing slowly. As the threat loomed over them, both girls knew that facing him might just lead to their end or revelation that could change everything. What awaited them in this darkened moment? Would they fight or flee? With each heartbeat echoing against their ears, the choice hung heavy in the air. Clara's hands trembled around the crowbar, her knuckles whitening as she gripped it like a lifeline. The cold metal felt foreign and heavy in her palms. As the figure approached, his smile stretched into a sinister grin, revealing teeth that looked sharp, eager to bite through their confidence. Such little mice, scuttling away, he mocked, his voice dripping with amusement. But every mouse must eventually face the cat. "Stay back," Lydia shouted, pushing Clara behind her. The weight of her heartbeat filled her ears. She couldn't tell if it was courage or sheer panic propelling her, but she refused to let Clara feel any more fear. The intruder laughed, a sound that clawed at her sanity. "Brave girl, but how far will that courage get you?" He took another deliberate step forward, the knife twirling in his hand, reflecting the dim light in deadly arcs. "Clara, we need to find a way out," Lydia shouted, eyes darting to the towering stacks of boxes and shelves around them. "Can we climb?" Maybe Clara's voice was shaky, but Lydia saw a flicker of determination as her friend raised the crowbar slightly. "But I don't know if we should turn our backs." Their options shrank with every second that ticked by, the air thickening with dread. Without warning, a loud crash echoed from one of the boxes behind them, scattering the shadows. Clara yelped, losing her grip on the crowbar. The intruder's gaze flicked to the noise, and in that moment, Lydia seized her chance. "Now," she shouted, lunging for the crowbar on the ground. She felt Clara beside her, both of them a tangle of limbs, fear igniting their actions. With a quick twist of her wrist, Lydia raised the crowbar and swung it at one of the nearby shelves, sending it crashing to the ground. The sound vibrated through the room, instantly drawing the intruder's attention back to them. The thud of the fallen shelf created a new barrier, a wall of clutter between them and the advancing threat. "Over here," Clara shouted, moving toward a stack of boxes that looked precarious but might provide a way up. Lydia's heart thudded louder than the chaos around them. With the crowbar clutched in her hand, she dashed after Clara, a determined light in her eyes. They scrambled to lift one of the lighter boxes, struggling together, adrenaline morphing their panic into something almost tangible. "Help me push," Clara grunted, her face scrunched in concentration. They wedged the box against the others, forming a makeshift tower. Suddenly, the intruder's laughter echoed again, deeper this time, more sinister. "Why run, when we can play?" His voice resonated through the noise, sending chills racing down Lydia's spine. "Keep going," she urged, their hands moving in a frantic rhythm. Finally, they managed to create a small opening that led to the top of a shelf filled with old crates. "Clara, I'll go first," Lydia said, scrambling up the precarious stack, giving a final push as they lifted each box into a makeshift staircase. Just as she hoisted herself up, a shadow loomed. She turned her head and felt a cold wave wash over her. The intruder was mere feet away, a darkness encapsulating him as he plunged into the heart of the room. "Is that really all you've got?" he sneered, a chaotic energy swirling around him. At that moment, the calmness of the room shattered. They threw the crowbar in desperation, but it clattered uselessly at his feet, unable to parry the advancing threat. "Run," Lydia cried. Clara leapt up to join her, scrambling for the escape. But as they climbed, the intruder lunged, strong and fearless, and with a swift movement, a box toppled, throwing Lydia off balance. She stumbled backward, her focus shattered, and everything began to spin. "Lydia!" Clara's scream pierced through the chaos, but the frightening reality pulled at Lydia's edges. The ground felt disorienting, the shelves around them closing in like a nightmare gone awry. Everything crashed into confusion. Lydia's body hit the ground hard, and she caught sight of Clara's terrified face, frozen in time as the shadows began to close in on them. Time slowed her. Heart hammered in her chest, blurring the edges of her vision. "Get away from her!" Clara's desperate shout felt like an echo in a vast void as the intruder's shadow descended. The darkness enveloped them, feelings of dread and despair intertwining. But amidst the pounding chaos, a wild hope glimmered faintly. Where would they turn now? Was this the end of their escape? The uncertainty paralyzed them both, but somewhere deep inside, a flicker of defiance sparked. What would they do when faced with the unimaginable? The clock ticked down, and they could either succumb or rise against the dark threat looming ahead. The tension in the air was suffocating as Lydia grappled with her fear and determination. Splayed on the floor, she felt the roughness of the carpet beneath her, a stark reminder of both her vulnerability and her resolve. Clara's frantic voice echoed in her ears. "Lydia, get up!" Clara screamed, desperation flooding her voice like a tidal wave. Shaking off the haze that threatened to pull her under, Lydia pushed herself up. She felt the adrenaline surge, a fire igniting in her chest. In that moment, she understood their fight was not just for survival. It was a stand against everything Clara's family had represented, everything oppressive and suffocating she had endured. She saw the intruder advancing, but this time, fear transformed into raw, unyielding courage. "Clara!" Lydia shouted, her voice a battle cry that rang through the chaos. "We're not letting him win." Clara's eyes widened at Lydia's transformation. That spark of strength resonated with her own fear, igniting something deep within. "Together!" she roared, raising the crowbar again as she positioned herself beside Lydia, their shoulders squared against the approaching darkness. The figure halted, confusion flashing across his face. "What's this? You think you can scare me with a toy?" he taunted, but the bravado sounded hollow against Lydia's emerging fired eye. In a moment of unison, they lunged together. Lydia swung the crowbar with all her might, connecting with the wall beside the intruder, sending an avalanche of boxes tumbling down. The crash echoed, filling the air with dust and a demonic cacophony. "Run!" Lydia shouted as she grabbed Clara's hand, tugging her along as the figure stumbled back, momentarily distracted. They sprinted through the debris-strewn room, heartbeats syncing with a primal rhythm of survival. Bare feet flying, they found themselves in a familiar corridor. "Lydia, this way!" Clara pointed urgently to a door at the end. It still felt like an escape route. They raced forward, clinging to the hope that lay beyond that wooden barrier. As they reached the door, it swung open with force, nearly knocking them back. There stood Marcus, his eyes fierce and protective. "Are you both okay?" Their urgency poured out in a whirlwind of breathless words. "We need to get out. He's right behind us." Without hesitation, Marcus propelled them through the door, slamming it shut behind him. "Don't worry. I've got help coming," he assured them, glancing back at the door on which heavy thuds were now landing, each one reminiscent of impending doom. But Lydia's mind spun. "Help," she whispered. "What about us?" "Trust me," Marcus said, but Lydia could see the uncertainty in his eyes as they hurried down another corridor. She felt Clara cling tighter to her arm, each step laden with the weight of their shared fear. Just as they rounded a corner, the intruder burst from the door, eyes blazing with anger. "Did you think you could escape?" he shouted, fury pouring from him like a raging storm. "Out of the way!" Marcus shouted, pushing Lydia and Clara into a doorway that led to a stairwell. "Go!" Lydia's heart raced as she glanced back, witnessing the darkness rush toward them. Before she knew it, they were bounding down the stairs, 2 steps at a time, hands gripping the rail for support. They emerged into the lobby where confusion still reigned. Guests peeked cautiously from behind furniture, eyes wide, understanding dawning amidst the chaos. "Stay back!" Marcus's voice boomed, his presence a pillar as he shielded the girls. Lydia could feel the crowd's fear dissolve into recognition. Here was someone standing against the threat, igniting defiance within them. "Clara, we have to get everyone moving," Lydia urged, her voice firm despite the tremors beneath. "We can't let him trap us here." Clara nodded, determination glinting in her eyes. "Right. Everyone listen," she called, voice echoing off the marble walls as the panic began to settle into shared resolve. Suddenly, the intruder's furious voice broke through. "You all think you can escape me? You'll regret this." He charged towards them, fury blinding him, to the strength of the group. But before Lydia could react, a cacophony split the air. The mansion's alarms shrieked, the noise ricocheting painfully inside her ears. The thundering of footsteps flooded the entryway, reinforcements of guards responding to the call. Shadows danced from the bright beams of their flashlights, illuminating the frightened faces huddled in the lobby. Someone shouted, "Get down!" The intruder froze, anger warping into fear as security converged, a wall of power against his chaos. "Step back," a guard ordered, brisk and unwavering, drawing a line between righteousness and madness. In that moment, as the guards overwhelmed him, Lydia felt the weight of fear lift just slightly. They moved together, The audience that had once been aloof now united against a common enemy. "Let us move. Everyone outside," Lydia shouted, leading the way. Clarifying her resolve, she pushed forward, guiding those still hesitating into the night. The moonlight a beacon of safety as they spilled onto the lawn. The fresh air felt electric against their skin. The night was alive with activity, sirens wailing in the distance, people pouring out into the open. Escaping the insanity of the night, Lydia turned, breathless but unbroken, her gaze roaming the crowd. "We made it," she breathed, glancing at Clara. Clara's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. "I can't believe it," she whispered, hugging Lydia fiercely. "Thank you for standing by me." "No, we stood together," Lydia replied softly as they stood under the vast night sky. Arms winding tighter, Lydia couldn't ignore the laughter beginning to fade behind them. A distance now greater than any divide had been before. The mansion, once a prison, felt like a relic behind them, memories twisted in shadows. Together, they had turned fear into strength, climbing from darkness into the light. With danger finally defeated, hope flickered bright in Lydia's heart. They could take back their lives. They were not just a maid and a matriarch. They were allies in a world where every voice mattered. But before leaving it all behind, Lydia felt a strong urge, a need to act. "Everyone, let us make sure what happened inside tonight doesn't happen again." The ripple of agreement washed through the crowd, fierce determination in the faces surrounding her. They had shared terror. Now they could share strength. Clara took her hand, their resolve unwavering as they marched forward together. And in that moment, Lydia remembered the shadows that had haunted her, the power they had usurped from her. She wouldn't forget, nor would she allow it to go unseen again. With her resolve solidified, she felt something surge inside, a flame burning brighter than ever, a wish for change, a story that was still being written. If you felt a rush of emotion, if you believed in their fight, then this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button to help feed the algorithm, showing everyone that these tales matter. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what will happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your voice is powerful, let us make it heard.